Let's go ahead and rate some of the used cars on this car lot, because no two vehicles are alike, and clearly they all have shiny paint technology, 4 wheels and a steering wheel, but that doesn't mean they're all equal. Some of these are reliable and some of them are total trash, and hopefully this arms you with the information you need to go shopping for your next used vehicle. We all know brand new is so expensive. More and more people are deciding to get into the used car vehicle space. So let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
The first one on our list we have is a Ram. This is of course not the Dodge Ram anymore. It's now Ram as a standalone brand. It's a 1500 and it has the 5.7 liter Hemi V8. A lot of people know about the Hemi tick. Of course, with poor oiling to the top, you wind up long-term chronically with a ticking noise and potentially oil burning and worst case scenario, catastrophic engine failure. Now that said, the transmissions are marginal. There have been lots of problems with that. And later generations of the Ram, of course, there's been problems with technology, engine, transmission, but ultimately they are built on a platform, heavy-duty truck platform, heavy-duty suspension, heavy-duty engines, and usually they're built still for a lot of miles. Even though reliability is not amazing, they will run a long time. Of course, unfortunately, now they switched in 25. They only have a V6 or inline turbo 6 called the Hurricane, and the jury's not out yet on terms of overall reliability, but the Ram in general, I give it a 2.5 out of 5 star for these vehicles. Here we have another Stellantis product. This is Jeep. Of course, you get the big grille. You can't mistake the Jeep Grand Cherokee. This is the newer style. Lots of plastic alloy wheels, of course, fold away high gloss mirrors. And this one here is the Laredo. You get the top roof rack and of course lots of great detailing around the back, LED taillights. Laredo, that means you get a V6, 3.6 liter V6 under the hood there, and it produces enough power to get you out of harm's way. Now that being said, it's one of their more reliable drivetrains, but still not bulletproof. You do get an 8-speed automatic transmission with this vehicle as well, and of course with that you can get oil leaks, coolant leaks. There have been problems with manifold brakes and as well CAN bus, which is the electrical system that ties all your components to the main brains. There have been a lot of issues with that. So electrics and electrical gremlins have been a problem for a lot of these Jeep products. And of course, the old tip-em on the older generations is something that you can anticipate. Now, with that said, because it's Stellantis and all these gremlins and issues, honestly, this one here is probably a 2.5 out of 5 star. Here, when we have a Wrangler, this is one of the fan favorites. A lot of people love these, and they were paying high dollars. Even the used car market commands a pretty significant dollar on the Wrangler. And a lot of it is just because the young buyers tend to think more with their hearts than with this necessarily. Sometimes there's really no justifying a vehicle that gets abysmal fuel mileage, mediocre reliability, and practicality that is enough to keep everybody but a seasoned gymnast from being able to enter and exit this vehicle. But basically what you have is beautiful, this classic Jeep look. You get the Tonka toy truck look. Of course, the headlights is nice, typical standard. Of course, lots of plastic. Sometimes they come unfinished. Alloy wheels. This is Sahara, so that means you get lots of painted detailing on here. Of course, basic handles there, but all of the roof and everything is painted, being the Sahara. Lots of great detailing, but lots of basic parts too. And you do get a bolt-on rear wheel here. Of course, these do come in a variety of different drivetrains, and that's the problem. Stellantis, you can get a Turbo 4, you can get hybrids, you can get V6, you can even get the big 392. But the bottom line is the reliability isn't necessarily what you buy a Jeep for. These, of course, tip-em or CAN bus issues, and of course leaks, coolant leaks, oil leaks. Of course, you get the death wobble underneath there because suspension gets loose, and then the articulation creates an exaggerated death wobble here. Electrical issues, water ingress through here, winds up inside. It's just a whole host of challenges. The quality overall is not just amazing. This vehicle here, 2.5 out of 5 star. Right here, we get a Ford Edge Classic. Now, some people swear by these, and while there's worse products in the Ford lineup, this one here, of course, does feature a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. This one does feature a turbocharged EcoBoost engine. Of course, right there, you get nice detailing, sloped back. It looks wonderful. Of course, nice glossy type tail lights and just an overall good look. For Ford, it's one of their more attractive SUVs. You get nice little details like that and little actual tailpipes, where a lot of vehicles are doing away with that now. Alloys, lots more chrome detailing there and chrome here. Very good looking vehicle. But transmission issues, this EcoBoost, turbocharger, coolant leaks. Have you heard about it burning coolant? How about intake valves breaking off? not the most amazing. There is a recall for some of these. So overall, I would give this a 3 out of 5 star. Right here, we have a Nissan Murano, 3.5 liter V6. The engine was not the weak point in this older outgoing Murano. It does look great. I love the style. Look at the headlights, alloy wheels, big bold mirror. Of course, it has that great little sensors underneath there. Look at all the chrome detailing on there. I definitely love the looks of the Murano, but unfortunately the looks don't align with the reliability. You do get a glass roof, but they've been known to blow out. Fuel system issues as well with these, and potential check engine lights related to that. But the problem with some of these is not even the engine as much, or even some of the other nickel and dime electrical gremlins, which does happen. The big issue is, of course, the continuously variable transmission, which Nissan's been using in way too many of their products for way too long, and that belts and pulleys has caused a lot of grief and hardship for the brand. Reputation's gone out the window, and now, fortunately for the latest generation, the full restyle, if you like the Murano, you can actually get a variable compression motor, but you can now finally get a torque converter automatic transmission, and gone is the CVT. But here you go, this one here, 2 out of 5 star. Right here, biggest piece of crap. This is, in my opinion, the worst vehicle that is made in the car industry today. Now, I believe it's been discontinued, but it ran for too long as well. Junk. What you're dealing with here is the Ford product with their smallest SUV called the EcoSport. Of course, you get the narrow little front lines on it. It sort of looks like an Escape, but it just looks like it didn't quite grow up. It didn't get fed enough protein while it was growing up, and it just became a null and void product. Of course, you get the typical type of hood line like you find in the Escape. Of course, you get these nice little alloys, and of course, typical mirrors, one-touch accent. Look at that little button there. Of course, you get the little center screen and a little pod. It looks cute. Yes, you even get a sunroof and a roof rack, but these things are junk. Of course, you do get EcoSport, the badging right there, which I would never recommend this to my worst enemy, Ford. And this is the SES 4-wheel drive. So not a great vehicle. And honestly, in my opinion, probably the worst vehicle in the industry right now. So I would never recommend this one. Why? Well, primarily the transmission's bad, but even more importantly, because this thing's such a trash bin on wheels, you're having issues with the engine. The 3-cylinder engine, you're talking about oil pump belts, which can pile up. Most vehicles use a set of gears to drive oil to feed the engine for lubricant. But unfortunately, in all their infinite wisdom, they used a belt, and that belt has been known to pile up. Rubber belt feeding the oil supply to the health of the engine. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Timing belt, submersed in oil. There's a lot of design attributes that make this vehicle the worst vehicle you can possibly imagine in your entire life. Junk. I would never recommend. This one here, I will give this a 1 out of 5 star. And here we have the Nissan Rogue. Again, another big loser. Why is that, I say? Well, it's one of the best selling vehicles that Nissan has, absolutely. And why would that be? Because it's highly incentivized, it's in a great price point that a lot of people can afford, it's practical, it's an all-wheel drive SUV, it does all of the things that everybody wants and expects. The problem is reliability, and it's not amazing. Why? Because the older Rogues, kind of like this variation, there is a new version of this, but these new older versions have this CVT transmission, which we spoke up time and time again. If you're not dealing with electrical gremlins or some other kind of odd obscure failure, which just random, it's something doesn't work, you go a reset and it comes back alive. I've heard of cases like that. I've browsed the forums, I've talked to a lot of people and owners of these vehicles, and generally it meets the intent. It's an SUV, but they're not overly satisfied with a lot of the reliability. Sure, while they throw some chrome on there and give you alloy wheels and a sunroof and a big fancy chrome roof rack, the bottom line is it's not a great vehicle, and sadly enough, I'm gonna have to give this one a 2 out of 5 star. Nissan Kicks. The only reason this one gets a little better rating, even though it uses a CVT, but you do get a base 1.4 liter engine, which is absolutely anemic, or you can now, in the latest, get an upgraded 2 liter, which is about 140 horsepower. Certainly is not going to win a lot of races. It is also a heap, but it's a cheap heap, and it's affordable, and it's simple. I mean, if you have to change a light in the front, it's cheap. If you have to change a starter, it's cheap. If you have to change an alternator, it's cheap. It's an easy, cheap, affordable car, but the problem is that continuously variable transmission. So while most people realize by now that Nissan struggle with CVTs, this one also has it. Now, that said, again, these vehicles are so cheap, so light, so moderate, that if something breaks, it generally is cheap to fix, except that transmission. That said, with a small anemic engine and a lightweight body, there's less strain and stress on that CVT transmission, so there's a better chance of survival for this vehicle. That said, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5 star. Right here, we have an Alfa Romeo. Right there, I love the grille of this vehicle, and I gotta say I have a soft spot for European cars. That doesn't mean it's reliable, but I still like to drive them. Yes, you get this big fancy headlight, clearly something very unique. I love these wheels on this vehicle. I've always really loved that style of rim that you find on these modern day Alfa Romeos, as you see right there. And just, you know, you get the same fold-away mirrors. I swear this is the same mirror we're seeing on Jags and Fords and every other vehicle. I truly believe this is a part that comes from the same manufacturer that feeds many other brands. Of course, you get the big sunroof on top, that nice low-profile roof rack on there to haul your roach-infested mattress over to the dumpster. Of course, also one-touch accents in. Naturally, you get red calipers front and back. And look around here. This is the Q4 Alfa Romeo Stelvio. Now, you do get some big, bold pipes on there, and I love that. You know, any car SUV that has conventional tailpipes on it and a torque converter automatic transmission like the 8-speed found in here means you've got a bit of a winner. That said, of course, try to get it serviced, try to get it fixed. You know what? It's not the most unreliable vehicle, but it's the service network that makes it challenging to own an Alfa Romeo. It is affiliated, of course, naturally with Stellantis, and that means you're going to get all the respective problems that may come with an Italian car. Stellantis seems to have scooped up and gobbled up all of the group of least reliable vehicles on the market, from Maserati to Alfa Romeo to you name it and beyond. But unfortunately, even as good as this vehicle is, and I love driving these, I certainly would consider owning one, but the reliability is not amazing. As a result, this vehicle here gets a 2.5 out of 5 star. And believe it or not, it's actually better than some BMWs and some Audis, but it's not as terrible as you would think. Again, it's just more about the service network. Right here, we have another one. We have a Mercedes-Benz. This one here is more of their entry-level SUV. They've restyled it. It's changed now in the latest generation. Of course, you get alloy wheels, Mercedes-type mirrors. You got that conventional design, that fork lights. Big sunroof on top, which have coincidentally been a problem, a source of popping off the rails or leaking. That's been a trouble area for that vehicle. Small little handles, lots of plastic, which does a great job of keeping the rocks off the body panel. You get the basic headlights on this vehicle and the conventional Mercedes front grille. Again, this is more of the hatchback. The CLA is the car version of this one, which is the GLA 250. And of course, this is a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine, also equipped with a 4MATIC, which gives you the all-wheel drive setup, and they're not amazing in terms of reliability. They're not the worst thing on the planet, no, by no means, but Mercedes, we've seen more problems. That French collaborated engine that they have under the hood there has had a share of issues. Now, it's predominantly a front-wheel drive vehicle, and in the 4MATIC, it drives a little extra power to the back, whereas if you step on into the C-Class instead of the CLA or the GLA, the C-Class gives you a predominantly rear-wheel drive with auxiliary power put down to the front. And of course, this one here means you've got a transversely mounted engine, whereas the other vehicles like the C-Class, it's longitudinal this way. These vehicles, not amazing, lots of tech going on here, but you know what, still, when it comes to Mercedes, Audi, and BMW, a lot of times it's the simpler the better. You don't get air ride, you don't get all those fancy technologies, you get a very basic setup. The only downside with this one is, again, as I mentioned, is that French-derived engine. There's been holes in pistons in certain cases, and some durability issues with the transmission, which happens to be double clutch in this vehicle. And again, sunroof, water leaks, electrical gremlins. I give this a 2.5 out of 5 star. And the next one here is a Subaru. We have a Legacy. Now, of course, I love the styling of some of these Legacy vehicles. They definitely are bold, and it's a good mid-sized car. You get fold-away mirrors, a little sunroof on there, and a little small handles. Very diminutive in your hand like that. Alloys. Of course, look at the taillights, pretty nice. A Subaru all-wheel drive, symmetrical all-wheel drive, as opposed to asymmetrical all-wheel drive. Right here, you have a Legacy GT. But generally speaking, in later models of the Subaru Legacy, you do get a CVT transmission, which sadly is not the best type of gearbox. But Subaru's is not as bad as, say, Jatco's from Nissan. And Consumers Reports state that Subaru is the up-and-comer and one of the most reliable brands on the market right now. You can get a 2.5-liter flat 4 or a turbocharged 2.4-liter under the hood as well. And even with both drivetrains, they're coupled up to that same gearbox. Reliability is pretty stout on these vehicles, and a lot of it just has to do with the fact that they're not pushing a lot of torque against that gearbox, and they tend to hold up. As a result, I'm going to give the Subaru Legacy overall, as a blended average, a reliability rating of 4 out of 5 stars. Here we have a Kia Seltos. Yes, they do give you some great little detailing. Look at the headlights, and you get these beautiful gunmetal gray alloys, a little flip away mirror. Look, easy access. You get that little button in there, and a great little interior. You get that little wide screen in there, as well as a center section. It's a quite nicely done interior. I've done a review on this vehicle too myself. Look, sunroof on top and a roof rails. Definitely a cool looking vehicle. You get the LEDs at the back and this Kia LX model of the Seltos. You get lots of great detailing on here, but unfortunately this vehicle has had a few issues. Now, it's not the worst product they make, and overall I liked when I drove it. The only thing is you get a fair amount of drone and buzziness because of the transmission is not the most inspiring. It's a 4-cylinder engine, and it's not that much of a hot rod. There have been a few issues with the transmission locking in, and you can't get it into gear or out of gear. So transmissions have been a problem. Engines, time will tell. Overall, a relatively simple vehicle with a moderate level of reliability. However, there have been some issues and recent recalls again with the Soul and the Seltos. You've got to check it out. There have been some problems. I'm going to give this vehicle here a 3 out of 5 star. If you're liking the video so far, you're going to love the rest of the channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and don't forget the notifications bell so you know when the next amazing videos come. But how about this unit right here? We have another Kia product. Here we have the EV6 pure electric vehicle by Kia. Certainly it has a very prominent front end. I do admit I like the front end of this. It looks very wide. It has a very aggressive stance at the front. Of course, you get the big headlights in the front there. You get the dark alloys, fold away mirrors. I love that, very sharp and crisp. Lots of glass on the roof, which I always like as long as it doesn't shatter or fall apart. Here you look around the back. Now, I'm not sure how to make this. I've never been the biggest fan of the way this looks, the way they've capped off this tail end of these EV6s. You get some interesting styling detail there. A little bit more styling detail as along with the high gloss finishing right there and the plastics associated. Of course, yellow calipers, very interesting, and fold away recessed door handles. Everything here recesses away, but these vehicles here have had their share of electrical gremlins. Of course, there's no engine there per se. What you do have is the 12-volt system has been problematic. Charging problems have also been an issue, and range and beyond. A lot of issues with seats and some of the infotainment system as well. Overall, a fairly basic vehicle, but all of that tech inside is usually what starts to go. You do have a heads-up display. I have heard of some people complaining where that flickers or goes out, but generally, I would say this vehicle is a little bit more reliable than something that they have in this space. This vehicle here, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5 star. Here's another Nissan Kicks. Forget about that one. How about this little Hyundai Sonata right here? The Hyundai, Kia, we know their internal combustion engines have had their share of troubles. Of course, you do get the new updated headlights. Of course, a new front grille on this car. I do admit, I do like the new style of it. I mean, look, you get this nice chrome line that goes all the way here and cycles all the way to the back, and then it goes and it does this full loop around. It's quite interesting that way. You get the big glass sunroof on top, fold away high gloss mirrors. I like some of the lines. It gives a very edgy look along the bottom edge of the doors. You get this pronounced rocker panel, alloys that look almost laser cut. As you cycle over here, you'll notice you get this nice little lip, very much like what you're doing with the EV6 over there. You're also transitioning some of that design language to the back end of these vehicles. High gloss finishing here, and there's the Sonata with a nice little light bar on it. And it's a nice alternative if you don't want to go Camry or Accord, which truly are, in my opinion, sort of the benchmarks of that mid-size sedan. But you do get that little center screen there. You do get a lot of plastic, and I would say overall fit and finish, interior quality feels a little bit more dressed up in the Accord. This feels a little bit more aligned with the Camry, although that said, the Camry is a little bit more flowy in the interior. These vehicles are not amazing. And unfortunately, transmission issues, dual clutch issues, 8-speed, there have been no shortage of problems. Hanging up, juddering, catastrophic failures. Engines, yes, lurching, problems with the engines, oil consumption, catastrophic engine failures, all resulting from a little bit of knocking. You hear some noise and all of a sudden it just shuts down. So while the mass majority of owners will find these cars relatively reliable, the problem is there's a significant number that do sustain catastrophic transmission or engine troubles. There have been electrical issues as well with these, but unfortunately late model Hyundai Kias, they tried to get out of the woods. You know, the old Theta 2 engines were a very problematic engine. These ones are a little bit better, but nonetheless, you track this back and you're going to find issues with, you know, scoring in the cylinders. You're going to find issues with piston rings. If you go back to the Theta 2, you're talking rod bearing problems, and these engines just generally were not all that reliable. This vehicle here, the Sonata, I'm going to give this vehicle a 2 out of 5 star. And then swing over to this one here. We have another Nissan. Now this is the latest Nissan Rogue. I showed you one of the older ones, but this one here, now we're talking about variable compression engine. We're talking about CVT transmissions. We're talking about some new technology and electrical and sensing and safety features. We have a friend that came out of a Hyundai that suffered one of those catastrophic Theta 2 engine failures, and then they went in to bought one of these. Believe it or not, within about 2 or 3 months, she started having drivability surging issues. Now this variable compression engine or motor VCMs are not the most reliable already. Instead of having a standard connecting rod, you have a series of joints in between, and it alters the compression. Of course, all about performance, all about fuel economy, but unfortunately, too much tech, too much going on under the hood, and they are becoming more problematic. This latest and greatest Nissan Rogue is finding themselves in a world of hurt. Even though it's one of the best sellers now and they are selling like hotcakes, a lot of that comes with the backs of incentives, and ultimately the reliability is not the most amazing. If you want something like this, if I could honestly point you towards a Mazda CX-5, CX-50, possibly even a Toyota RAV4, or of course a Honda CR-V. They will all do much better than this in terms of overall reliability, but as a result, I give this a 2 out of 5 star. And with all of that said, be sure to check out that video. That's going to help you understand where some of the best buys are for 2025 if you're concerned about reliability. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye.